February 23rd, 2024. This is the second meeting of the month for the OHDSI Phenotype Development Evaluation Workgroup. This workgroup is responsible for the Phenotype Phebruary, and this year the Phenotype February is led by Aza, Anna, RCA, and Jamie Weaver. We are supporting them. There are some folks on this call who are participating in the Phenotype February in various capacities. So we want to use the time today just to catch up where we are in Phenotype February, and we'll go through just a high-level summary, and then we'll talk about the actions that needs to be done to complete the responsibilities that we have taken up. So Azad, do you want to give a high-level overview of a 1-minute summary of Phenotype February's broad idea and where we are?
Okay. So as a reminder, we are working on 4 different conditions: Alzheimer, lung cancer in its 2 types of non-small and small cell lung cancer, and major depressive disorder, MDD, and pulmonary arterial hypertension, PAH. We are in the week of MDD. We have finalized Alzheimer, made our learnings, finished the work on lung cancer, made our learnings, and then we are now in MDD. The steps of the work start with reviewing the literature, abstracting the information from the literature, identifying cohorts that were presented in studies in the last 4 years, and then go ahead and replicate those cohorts, and then understand the differences among these cohorts or these definitions by understanding the differences in incidence rate and in the patient's composition or characteristics. Also understand how much differences do we see after we adjust for measurement errors. So for MDD, we are now in the steps of that replication. We're at the peak of that replication. We have 20 cohorts to be replicated, shared by Anna in our literature abstraction form for replication. We have people who signed up to replicate those cohorts and people who signed up for QC this cohort. And the last 2 days, people who signed up for these things have been actively working on completing that task. The status right now, if Anna and I, when we look at the list, almost all the cohorts have been assigned to somebody or they signed up by somebody. I think we have 2 cohorts that are, no, not even. Well, Anna signed up. Okay. Yeah, we have 1 cohort that is a loner, but we can get it done now or today. And then we still have, we need to QC those cohorts. Out of the so the cohorts have been taken by somebody or assigned for somebody. And I see that almost, yeah, maybe out of the 20, it looks like there are 13 cohorts that already have been replicated and exist in Atlas demo. And there's few that are assigned, but the people haven't yet put their cohort ID in, so they're still working on it. In terms of QC, Anna and I yesterday started QCing those that are done but not QC'd yet. And we think that there's some room for improvement in terms of replication. And then since Phenotype one objective of Phenotype February is also the learning and the education, including the learning of how you can use OHDSI tools like Atlas. So we think that part of the thing we should talk about is those common practices in Atlas and how to avoid common errors, which we identify just by QCing the MDD cohorts. But this is where we are, basically. By the end of the day, to stay on track, we have to finish all those cohorts replications so we can put them all in a cohort diagnostic package, and we can learn what we can learn and share those learnings on Tuesday in the call. We already ran cohort diagnostics. Jamie ran cohort diagnostics on 5 cohorts that were ready as of yesterday. So that is also something that we could start digging into if we want to kind of learn something about those 5 before we complete the full list of the 20. But as a priority in terms of staying on the track, we need to finish those 20. And we can take the time on the call today to either QC one of the things together, and that would one of the course together, and that would achieve the goal of education, because we will touch on some of those common errors. We can also talk about our learnings from replicating, people who replicated like me. Patrick replicated and kind of summarized his finding. We can share that today too.
All right, so we got 3 agenda items that we can continue on, such as one is you all select 1 or 2 cohorts that you want to point out common errors or common opportunities to improve. The second one is to discuss about the lessons learned, and the third one is potentially review the core diagnostics output that Jamie has created. So those are the 3 ideas. I think we may not have time for all of them. Just a 1 hour call. So you're the lead on it, Anna. Do you want to start sharing screen and look at the cohorts? Is that something we can do?
Well, I think the very first question is whether people on the call, if there anybody in the call who has been involved in this activity. And I think what would be useful for me is to understand where people's interest is, because we obviously can QC the cohorts on our own, and we can review the cohort diagnostics on our own. And since we have 18 people, it's a small enough group to get the sense of what people will be interested in.
Yeah, anybody on the call who participated by replicating a cohort, who have some insights or have some question, whether insights about like the papers or how people phenotype MDD, or questions about how to replicate or how to use Atlas. I see here Septi is here. We talked yesterday. She was one of the people who replicated 2 cohorts. Septi, if you have any insights you learned or anything you want to share from that exercise. I don't see anybody else who.
Hi, yeah. Hello, can you hear my
Yeah.
voice?
Yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, I think I just want to ask one question. I don't know, is because I think I found that one source code that it's not part of the ICD-10-CM, but ICD-10-CM. Like I try to look also into Athena, is not into it's not part of the ICD-10-CM. So like, is it yeah, like I think in the last meeting uh you mentioned that, yeah, I need our own judgment, like if we want to include this source code or not, based on the maybe record count or not. So yeah, I just want to ask, like, what's your opinion, like, is it if it's like really contribute to the record count, like should we still
Sure.
include it or not?
What's the code?
F20.4.
Anna, maybe you share your screen and we open that cohort.
Stop sharing.
Dipti, is that still Article 22 by Ravi? Is it Ravi paper or is it Eon paper? It's the Ravi paper, correct?
Septi, could you hear us?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I was on mute. Yeah, it's Ravi paper.
Oh, okay, it's Ravi.
this one, right?
Yeah, yes, that's
And I'm here in my F1, which means that somebody is not muted. And this is really disturbing.
There's an echo. I think it went away. You're good.
All right. Oh yeah, now it's much better. Alrighty. So the code is, what was the code? F20. It's not F20. F20 is
Right. I see a message from Andy.
It's
Andy
F20.4. That's what I heard.
F20.4. So that's ICD. That's ICD-10. So we're talking about not ICD-10-CM, but ICD-10.
Yeah.
And this one maps to post-schizophrenic depression. So this is what you would include. Now, I think the question was whether you why we don't see it in ICD-10-CM, if I got the question right, although I wouldn't swear. ICD-10-CM data. So there is this nice website that I use all the time to just look up. Sure.
So Andy was.
I'm snooping
Septi,
around there too.
Septi, was your question? You wanted, it's listed. So F20 is listed in the paper.
yeah, F20.4.
Correct. And it maps to the same ideas. I think Septi is yeah, the echo.
Sorry.
No
So
problem.
the paper must have done something for in non-US data sources, because they're using ICD-10, not ICD-10-CM, because ICD-10-CM does not have this code. Like, they just don't have it. They have a different structure, which actually
it looks like Andy has identified that this is a World Health Organization /UK ICD-10 code. Andy,
So
can you
this is-
comment on that?
Well,
this
just
is
if you
what
look
I
in
was saying.
Athena, you can see that there's others too. I mean, the Koreans use it, the Chinese use it. I guess the question for me would be, why are we using ICD-10-CM necessarily? Since it's both of those are non-standard anyway, we ultimately are translating it. Wouldn't we just include it as an ICD-10, one of these other ICD-10 sources, like just the straight ICD-10 code?
So maybe let me rephrase what I just said. The paper uses ICD-10, not ICD-10-CM. So we
Right.
need to be grabbing ICD-10 codes and follow the crosswalks. And that's it. So there is maybe the question, Septi's question was why we don't see ICD-10-CM, this code in the ICD-10-CM. Well, that's a good question. I actually don't know why, because usually the structure is very much similar. But the paper itself, I think, is a non-US data source. Let's actually check it.
I'm a little bit confused because none of the papers has ICD-10 unless the copying was wrong, because it says ICD-10-CM. If I'm looking at the abstraction sheet.
So that
Maybe
might
we
have.
also
Check it out.
The paper
I'm
is
seeing it
used
turn up in a.
database.
I'm seeing this turn up in like a German website. Let me see.
So each country can modify ICD-10, and like the United States has done a substantial modification, but any of the countries can make changes to ICD-10 as long as it's clear what they're doing. So the fact that the US ICD-10-CM does not have that particular code and that diagnosis has been allocated to other codes is not that surprising. So again, I'm not sure. I'm going back to what Anna said, is I'm not sure. Maybe the mistake was when they were abstracting it, they just assumed it was CM and not just 10, but it's there as 10, and so why not just use it?
Well, I think we're making wrong assumption. If I'm looking at the right paper, and I really need Septi to confirm, I'm looking at article number 22. It is, the main author is Ravi B. I think she has the second author. It is a US study, and the codes are ICD-10. So I think the ICD-10-CM. I don't think there's ICD-10 in there. I think it's a US-based study, and the codes used in the paper, I'm looking at the paper right now, is ICD-10-CM. And there
But
is
they
a
made a mistake.
F20.4. There is F20.4 listed in the codes used. And now I'm gonna copy for you the actual URL, and let's just.
Yeah, I'm on it. I will open it in the
Maybe it was retired. Let me take a look.
in the,
Yeah, and it's just for everybody to just.
Hey,
well, the
Ozzy,
bottom line.
I have a
was
quick
never there.
question. Is the convention for naming the phenotypes in Atlas to put in the first name of the author of the study so we can crosswalk them? Or I'm just curious because the name is like, what was it, Parika or something? I mean, that's super confusing.
Yeah, that was just a second. So this is like, we did not tell people conventions, because the way we're crosswalking is people are putting the cohort ID in the sheet itself, and we're not trying to interpret namings, but people are doing it differently. I personally have been putting the first author and the year in the name, just for me to know who is who. But the real way to know who is by putting the ID in the sheet, and that would tell you which paper is replicating which cohort ID.
Okay, thanks. And I just asked so I know how I can potentially help when we get to the end of this. So thank you.
Okay, so here's the
if
paper.
we go, I think the codes are in supplements, if I remember that correctly.
Yep.
So, well, the bottom line is what we've been, like both Andy and myself were trying to say, is that it's not really material. F20.4, well, they say, let me actually reshare the whole screen because you obviously cannot see that. Well, they do say ICD-10 without saying CM. That is just uncommon because US studies usually use US version of ICD, which is ICD-10-CM. Nevertheless, we do not see this code in the current list of the ICD-10-CM codes. And this website, Athena doesn't have it. This website, which is a good website for reference, doesn't have it either. So maybe it was never there. Maybe it disappeared. It is really not material, because if we go into Athena and just type in F20.4, we will see that there are other versions of ICD, like WHO, China, Korea, Germany, France. They have all the same names, and they specify that it's post-schizophrenic depression. So even though ICD-10-CM doesn't have this code, based on the nature of the study, we can safely assume that the people who created this phenotype wanted this post-schizophrenic depression in the concept set as well. So what I would do is I would just look up what this thing maps to, and it maps to post-schizophrenic depression in SNOMED, and I would just include it in the concept set. And if we click on this one, we will see that it also brings, it doesn't actually bring anything else. It just brings flavors of ICD-10s that all say post-schizophrenic depression. So it's rather safe to assume that we can just include this code.
I agree.
Does anyone know if, like, I'm just scanning this paper now for the first time, and they used the VA
Yes.
claims database. Is there any possibility that this code in fact exists in the VA database, despite what Thamir and Andy showed, that this is like a World Health Organization ICD code?
So if you actually read the body of how they define, they said the diagnosis of the depression disorder identified from International Classification Disease ICD codes, 9th and 10th revision. So they actually say it's ICD-10 in the body of the paper, and they say it's not ICD-10-CM. So they are specifying it as ICD.
I'll just say, I
that
don't know
is-
that I would always trust all of the people that do
Yes.
this work to know the difference between
Yeah, I know, fully
ICD-10 and
understand.
ICD-10 CM.
Yeah.
And I am just trying to look up on the site you showed, they list changes, and at least for 2024, that 50.4 was not deprecated. But I am going back right now, and I'll let you know what I find, to the 2021 list, which is when this phenotype was created, just to see if 20.4 was an ICD-10 in 2021. So
Yeah, I looked through a database for IMO, which has all retired codes, and it's not in there. So it's never been a valid CM code. I could save you the time of going through each version.
Yeah, but to Anna's point, it's a great example of how hard it is to replicate things, because people assume they put the codes, and now they either put a code that is not consistent with the existing codes, or you have to make interpretation. Did they mean ICD-10-CM, or did they mean actually ICD-10? Because yeah, sometimes you're right. We can't really confirm that they know the difference. But in the supplementary material, they actually call it ICD codes, not ICD-10, not
It's really-
ICD-10-CM.
Yeah. Well, if we're on the subject, actually there is not, at least I'm not aware about same codes in ICD-10 WHO and ICD-10 CM having different meanings. But this is definitely not true for other flavors. Like, for example, if you take Danish version of ICD-10 and you compare the very same codes with ICD-10-CM, sometimes the meaning is slightly different. So when you operate with local flavors of ICD-10, and let's for now say WHO is not local because it's WHO, but if we're talking about French version, a German version, or a Korean or Danish version, sometimes you cannot rely on the code itself because the meaning is going to be slightly different. But in this case, it doesn't seem to be the case. But for other things, if you happen to, replicate a paper with a local flavor, you got to be careful about actually looking up those codes in the local extension.
But what we learned is F20.4 doesn't exist in ICD-10-CM and doesn't exist in ICD-9. But the idea of post-schizophrenia depression, in this case, seemed that it was something that they identified. Andy?
Actually, when you bring that back up again, I think I was actually quite curious what they mean by stop codes. So it looks to me like they excluded things.
Where's this thing?
Psych service utilization stop codes?
This is not for the phenotype definition. That's for the utilization.
Okay. All right. I just I was interested in how those would have been coded. So
I think this is a VA thing, but it was, yeah. It was because the paper was looking at utilization and cost and stuff.
I just pinged Scott, who's probably not awake yet at VA, to see if that code does in fact appear in their data. So provided when he wakes up in the morning and how quickly he gets to his computer, he might be able to tell us whether it in fact appears in there.
Doesn't Athena allow you to
Sorry. Stop codes just represents clinics, the types of clinics.
Yeah. Okay. But Jamie, I wonder about I thought Atlas allowed you to select which database you were looking at for prevalence of codes, or do you only?
It depends on, like, Atlas sits on top of databases on people's institutions, and at J&J, our Atlas instance sits on top of the databases that J&J licenses, which does not include the US
So we don't
VA.
have access to the VA one.
No, that's why I hit Scott about it. So we'll see.
Got it. I just wanted to understand, because I thought you could do that from the main site, but I guess VA is not in there. Yeah.
No, I mean, Anna might be able to say if the concept prevalence study hit off the VA, and if there's some way to.
No, they didn't. It didn't.
Okay.
It didn't, but it also, like, it's nice to ask Scott, but I don't think it matters. It probably doesn't matter that much, because conceptually it makes sense because they wanted to include all depressions. Actually, funny enough, we were doing QA/QC of this cohort yesterday, and we quickly realized that it's not in fact major depressive disorder, but just depression. And because of that, you will see a lot of different things that they included in it, like dysthymia, which is like just disturbance of your mood, or bipolar disorder.
Bipolar, which is like, yeah. So this
What was
paper
the
is
name? What was
unique.
the name of the cohort that used this one again? This was the name of the
It's
Parish. Got it.
Beric 2021, and it's, if we look in our spreadsheet, it's number 22, and they basically just looked at healthcare
Right.
utilization.
This
of-
wasn't one of the 7 that you sent
No.
me. No. Okay, got
no,
it.
these weren't, but we sort of expect this cohort to be we expect patients in this cohort to be very different from others because they included a lot of other types of depression and depression-like states that are not MDD. So this is sort of to be expected. All right, so that was one question.
Yeah, so our advice would be to include the SNOMED code. Number one, because clearly that is an idea that is included in the codes. It will not affect your ICD-10-CM or ICD-9-CM source codes that are included because that code doesn't map to any, because that idea actually doesn't exist in those two vocabulary, at least the verbatim of it. It might be some other flavor.
So and I think Septi included it here. One of the interesting things what this concept said, which might be of an interest to the broader audience, is that you would think, so they said, we want to look at depression in patients being treated in VA for veterans for prostate cancer. And they provided this long list of all sorts of depressions, which includes, or at least the idea behind it is to be probably as comprehensive as possible because they're including depression after schizophrenia. They include depressive disorder, this one major depressive disorder. They include depression episodes. They include other things. So by looking at this list, our thought was, oh, well, they want to be very comprehensive, right? But in fact, if you try to translate this list of codes into SNOMED, you will quickly see that there is not a very easy way of doing this because all of these terms map in all sorts of different places in the hierarchy. And that's why we probably need to QAQC this concept set again. But as of right now, you see that it has a bunch of different things that are not in the same place in the hierarchy, like recurrent depression, dysthymia, depressive disorder, and so on and so forth. And probably this one, depressive disorder, is the largest code. So you would think, well, if people just wanted, if researchers here just wanted to represent the idea of depression, can't they just take depressive disorder, any depressive disorder, and all descendants, and just be fine with this concept set? Because probably any depressive disorder and all descendants would represent this conceptual idea of any depression. But in fact, if I remember correctly, what happened, if you go to the hierarchy, if you go to related concepts, and there is this thing, I actually didn't know that it's here, so maybe it's going to be useful as well. If you click on the code in Atlas and you click on related concepts, and then you scroll down to relationships, there will be this type of relationship, which is derived relationship. It does not exist in the concept relationship, but it exists in Atlas for the purpose of usability. And it says has relation to descendant of, non-standard to standard. So what it gives you, it will give you all source codes, but not only for this code, but also for all of the descendants, which is sort of cool. And if we click on that and we select ICD-10-CEM and ICD-9-CEM, and maybe because now we saw that they also use ICD-10, maybe we'll add ICD-10 as well. And if I remember correctly, what I learned yesterday is that if you look at this list of all source codes and we compare this list to the list that they specified, we will in fact see that this list has more codes that their list. So there are some sorts of depressions that are depressions and are kids of depressive disorder, but for some reason they didn't include it. And if I'm fast enough, I will be able to find it on the spot.
I think there's the postpartum that they did not include that probably maps into this.
Or yeah, maybe I'll get to that. Or the thing that I see here is that there is depressive schizoaffective disorder, depressive type that they didn't include. Or let me actually do it like this. This could be smarter. Or 31. No, they have 31. Or there were, as I said, there were other types that they didn't include. 33 they included. Or postpartum depression, for example. Or depressive conduct disorder. No, that's I feel this is a bug. Let me actually write it down. I think it's a problematic mapping because depressive conduct disorder, I think it's not actually depression. But anyway, the point we're trying to make is that this list now has more entries than their list, which sort of to us highlights this notion of you should not be, if you want to do good research, you should not be really cherry picking ICD codes because there is a high chance that you're going to miss something. And instead, it would be nice if there was a hierarchy that would easily tell you what to choose. And we do have SNOMED, which sometimes is not perfect, but in fact, in most of the times, it performs better than ICD because of the hierarchy. And if you happen to choose depression after schizophrenia or because of schizophrenia, you might as well include depression after you're giving birth. Yeah, and somebody has their hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. So I think it's really context dependent. So yes, you can. It's not cherry picking. It really is not. If you want to focus in on a specific condition, the problem with depression is it's such a broad condition. And I actually, from someone who does a lot of work in PROMs and depression, I was disappointed to see that they also included a PHQ or a PHQ-9 score greater than or equal to 4, which is not MDD either, right? That's a better indication that might have some indication of depressive disorder, and that's a pretty low bar. But the thing you don't want is you don't want postpartum depression. You don't want any post-maternal, or prenatal data points muddying up the waters. But you also don't want these other indications where you might have a PHQ-9 score of greater than 4 or equal to 4, which is not it's not a diagnosis of depression, right? It's an indicator that the person needs some additional follow-up to determine whether they do have depression and what the severity is. So you have to be very careful when we're developing these concept sets to make sure that you're actually specific to the phenotype that you're actually trying to develop, and not just capturing a kitchen sink of anything that possibly mentions depression, which SNOMED is really bad for because it has everything in it, right? And if you're just working on the keyword terms, you can end up with a lot of mess that's going to really muddy up the waters.
Yeah, that is absolutely, in general, this is absolutely correct. And this is a great point. Just to make sure that we're on the same page with this specific paper, they explicitly said they don't want major depressive disorder. They want any sort of depression. So this is where this hodgepodge of all sorts of things is coming from, because they kind of want it to be broad. Of course, when you want when you want to be more specific about the types of patients you're including, and you actually want depressive disorder as a diagnosis, you would pick different codes and you would be stricter. But in this case, they want it to be broad.
Right. And it was interesting that they pulled in the bipolar and other things, and those typically come in through the medication similarities to depressive disorder and not through the diagnosis codes, which is kind of, we actively exclude them in our phenotype for the measures because we know that that's how they sometimes get in. But like I said, this is not one of my favorite phenotypes.
So just a comment, and this is not this paper, to Ben's point, and it's not really, this is what I are learning more and more doing the exercise this year of Phenotype February, and it's not really only this paper. There's a common theme that you're going to see it across all papers, and maybe that's the problem is because of the way we write manuscripts. Often people, when they tell you what's their phenotype, what's their after, whether it was a study population they want to learn about, or it was an outcome that they're trying to see if it's associated with some sort of exposure, regardless, none of the papers actually define clinically, Ben, what is the phenotype they're trying to get to. It doesn't matter how they get to, whether they use SNOMED. I agree with you, SNOMED probably, you could use SNOMED, you could use ICD. It doesn't matter because all of these codes are actually trying to represent some clinical phenotype. But it is hard. We are trying to say, well, did they do a good job or not? And Anna's saying here, they didn't do a good job because they said they want depression. They just used the term depression. They actually didn't explicitly say that we don't want MDD or we want any depression. They just said depression. It's up to you how you want to, it's up to you to decide what that means. And that what it means to them is that set of codes. Ben, to your point, if you're expert in the topic, you would look at these codes and you say, well, that's confusing because yeah, you don't want postpartum, but why would you put a score that is higher than 3? That's not really depression. But have they actually defined with 1 or 2 lines what exactly they're after, whether in this case it was their study population, what is it they are trying to learn about their utilization clinically, what is that phenotype? Then that could justify their selection of codes. And you could then say, well, that code is not really consistent with what they described. But often every paper lacks that declaration of what is it they're trying to approximate by that selection of codes. And they leave it to us to make that approximation by saying, well, it looks like it's antidepressant, but not this. And for people who are not actually expert, Ben, it looks like it's a cherry picking because you don't have any reference. Yeah. And we're using SNOMED, which gives us a sync, as you said. So I agree. So this is our first learning is that in these papers, we really need a line of some definition of that phenotype, which could be like the institution of, I don't know, declared depression to be this or that, or.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, especially given that their introduction makes you think that they're actually after depressive disorder, but this concept set implicitly suggests that this is not true.
Yeah,
and
sorry. Yeah, I was going to make that comment too. The introduction looks like they are after kind of a depression that I would say could be classified as like a major depression disorder. But I'm kind of curious, just for the sake of this work, I mean, if we were to read a paper and say, hey, but actually what they did is they got depression in any ilk, whether it was like kind of a symptom of another disease or anything like that, does this really fit? Like, do we want to build this phenotype? Like, I might say that this is like not focused on major depression once you get into it a little further, and we would kind of exclude it from being an example of a major depression disorder phenotype, and then not even go further with it.
Agree.
I would actually extend that to not even just major depressive disorder, but actually a treatment. So just actually identify patients who need some kind of follow-up and treatment. And the sensitivity is all over the map on these codes, and like I said, the scores they're using for their proms. You would be flooded with all, as they probably were, with lots of codes and people theoretically who have some kind of depression that may have just been on the margin, won't need anything. So like I said, from a treatment or a clinical identification perspective to inform further quality of care or quality improvement or identification of gaps in patients. This definition just is far too broad.
And what kind of question it actually prompts is that, for example, for our phenotype library, when we collect phenotypes, how when somebody wants to reuse them, how they can make some sort of educated call on the types of phenotypes they want to use. Because, if I go now, I probably won't see many depressions, but if we were to put some of these things into phenotype library, which we will not, but imagine, then we will have multiple flavors of depression that are all labeled depression, but in fact are different flavors of depression. So how can somebody make an educated call when they're dealing with the universe of phenotypes, what to choose for their study? And are there elements that you want to report about phenotype to make this informed judgment possible?
Context is for
I have two hands on, hold on. I can't see it anymore. Whoever had their hands up.
That is a particular use case. But I think there's a need to have a intentional definition with the phenotype that explains sort of its purpose.
Yeah.
Finding and using.
Ben, your audio quality is breaking up, I believe. Just want to use this.
Yeah, sorry.
So one of the first Phenotype February, one of the ideas that we as a community worked on was to state upfront what the target clinical idea is that we are modeling. And we promulgated this idea of clinical description, right? Write clinical description in sufficient detail that has these types of attributes. Sounds like we've come to that notion here that if a group of researchers publish on a clinical idea, but they don't clearly describe it with sufficient detail, then an independent reviewer is unable to judge if the code selected represents that clinical idea or not. And that's a lesson that we could share at a later stage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Gowtham, the clinical descriptions we write are usually like 1 page or more. Have you thought of, and you probably have, I just missed it. Have you thought of the short?
That's very very broad without really narrowing it into like how do you intend, what's the intentional definition, and how do you tend to use this definition?
I just put that in the chat, exactly.
So, hold on. Somebody else's hands is up. Oh, that's Wojtek. Wojtek?
Yeah, if we are still on this topic, I have the next item about the QA results, so I can wait until we finish this topic.
Okay, perfect. And I think it's like one of the learnings that will go into depression, went into Alzheimer, is that idea of defining that clinical upfront, and obviously in a paper link that to the, or make it consistent with the context of the research, right? So like, here my phenotype is MDD, and that's because my clinical question is relevant to that. A sentence that declare what the clinical description, and of course make it sensible given the context of the study. However, we are still, Gowtham mentioned the clinical description, which is we are obviously trying, is a tool that we're trying to utilize in a means of declaring what the phenotype of interest is, but we still are struggling with how that template should like, how long, how short, and there's so many discussion about, wait, you can't really have a clinical description that is absent of a research question. What does that even mean, and how would you justify that? And so we're still debating. There's still debates about that. I will share that there was one paper that we found when we were working on Alzheimer that actually did a very good job describing clinically what they're after in the case of Alzheimer. And in that case, even it's a paper, so they only have maybe a word count very limited to communicate what they intend to, but they referenced a clinical definition adopted by some association, and that kind of set the standard what they're after based on some authoritative party. That could be a good practice that, but that was one example which I thought was a good declaration of what the phenotype is, can help us working on our clinical description. Okay, we can go to the QC. Vitek QC'd a lot of work, so I'm sure he has a lot of insights.
Well, so I have two items. The first item is, so I reviewed line 14 by Dave. He did a great job in representing things, but my feedback is, or my question to the group is, that paper kind of had an element of major depressive disorder, but it essentially essentially took 3 drugs and compared the adherence to these drugs. So my QC command was, and Dave replicated all 3 cohorts. So my suggestion that we need to also from this paper take just the MDD definition, and so not really try to replicate the paper, but take somebody mentions what's the purpose of things. So, and I'm not sure if it actually even matters their MDD definition, because their cohort entry criterion was filling in one of these 3 drugs which way they were trying to compare. So I almost we also have 20 papers. So I'm not sure if we need all 20. So one feedback is how to deal with that, and that was kind of my proposal or my approach to that. The second question or the second item is, in my review, I basically looked at the concept sets, and the goal was to evaluate whether this concept set fully subsumes the things enumerated in the paper. I have a question to others who understand the CIRSE and some of the inner workings of Atlas. My goal would be to take the JSON definition of this cohort, and whether if you click actually on the diagnosed MDD, you have who has the screen, and the diagnosed MDD depends on the MDD according to Broader 2018. So if you click on back to concept sets of this thing, so I want to basically have point our script to take this definition 1788947, take concept sets 4 titled MDD according, and if I enumerate it in R, my list of codes which I expect to see in the included source codes. So the question is, can I do it currently computationally? Because I know I can access, the concept sets included in cohort definition are not the same as concept sets, self-standing concept sets. So whoever has deep Atlas expertise, can I computationally retrieve, if I say this cohort 4?
Did you just need a spreadsheet with the codes that are included in this concept set expression? Is that the ask?
Well, yeah, but I don't want to do it with the mouse and point and click. That's my question. Okay,
you can do it with the mouse and the point and click, which is available through the UI. There's also an R package called R OHDSI Web API. That's an OHDSI package, and that allows you to just point to the Atlas instance, and with like one line of command, you will get it into R's data frame. It's R OHDSI Web API, so that's Web API.
So, like this.
Yep. Oh, there you go. So this package here it gives you that ability, and I can give you some sample code if you're interested.
Okay. Because that would be very good for validation. I basically have to write an expander of the X notation on the paper, arrive at the thing, and then call the API and point it to the right concept sets, and my validation work would be done by a computer and not me.
Yep.
Okay.
I lost you when you said accentation, but yes, sounds very smart. Go for it. But I guess for this cohort, we will need to really compare the patient characteristics for this cohort. We need to remove this piece with the drugs and just keep the diagnosis, right?
But is was the drug just because of the study populations? Because or is it part of the definition of?
They were comparing. The study itself was comparing 3 different drugs.
Okay. Right. So we're just gonna look at the MDD part. So we can remove that index as long as it was not by definition requiring everybody to be treated.
Just as a point of clarification, and Wojciech, maybe you can help clarify this, but from what I understood from you, that for this paper, they used an earlier paper where they defined the MDD and they referred to that. And it just, so if that's true, then I would say, wouldn't we do something like, if we ran into something like this, we would just kind of make sure that we had that earlier paper on our list and we would build from that earlier paper?
Yeah,
and then someone would really
that would be
need to
another
do
solution.
this.
Exclude it. Yeah, I think we should even exclude it because it's really focused on. They even say 3 mutually exclusive definitions. So
Well,
the core of the
excluded-
paper is
yeah,
about 3 mutually exclusive cohorts.
Yeah, and I guess we would only exclude it if we have the paper on our list, right, that they're referring to for the MDD phenotype definition, because that's the one we would build. And here in this paper, they use that earlier developed phenotype definition.
Agree, Lisa. So what we did, we had the same stuff with Alzheimer where people actually reference another. So we went back, and when we built the definition, it was referencing the original one, pointing that there was other paper that used it, and that's how it came, because some of these papers are before our study time of the 4 years. So you'll find papers that are older, and the way they're there because they had the phenotype that was used with one of the inclusion papers.
I actually do not see reference to another paper, but we can always double check. I mean, right here, they just say patients with MDD were identified by the presence of at least 1 inpatient or 2 outpatient claims for MDD, and then they have codes. So I would think that the cohort would be as simple as this paragraph.
Yeah,
If
I
you
would
want to
agree
just
with
want to
you, Anna.
replicate
I
MDD.
think I misunderstood what Wojciech said. I thought he said they were referring to an earlier one, but I agree. It would just, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, we don't need the medications. We're just looking at the MDD.
Hayden, do you want to say something? Hayden, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's actually a separate topic, so I'll wait and see if anybody has more on this before.
I mean, go ahead, because it's 2 minutes till the end, so just go ahead.
I apologize, I haven't been able to join most of these meetings, but I wanted to check in with the PHQ-9 and how that's being used. Just because I've been doing some cohort validation over at the VA's data set, and one thing that we've been made more and more aware of is the process with the PHQ-9-2 and then the PHQ-9. Of course, in a clinical setting, they do the PHQ-2 and then the PHQ-9. And what we found is when we pair that, it's a good way to validate things. It comes out pretty close in the sense that we will get PHQ-2s for the PHQ-9 kind of following. I wonder if we can build that logic in at all. I'll have very few cases where they get the PHQ-9 and hadn't got the PHQ-2, but a lot of cases where they just had the PHQ-2. If that
So I'm just
makes sense.
Yeah, I think let me quickly answer this question because I think I do get it. Well, there is as opposed to like other scores that we've came up with a standardized analytics to compute those scores that are in like cohort method, like Charlson index and stuff. For PHQ, I don't think there is any standard or like Themis approved way of calculating stuff or just looking up the stuff, because this can live PHQ results, and the test itself can live in all sorts of different ways in AMOP-CDM, very much depending on how you ETL'd your data and what you have in your data. So sometimes like Columbia will have, I think, PHQ and then the actual number in the value as number. So like PHQ and then value is number 7 or 6 or whatever the score you get. You also have individual, in some of the data sources, you have individual questions, and then you would probably, the answer will be yes or no, and then you will have to somehow aggregate to arrive at the numbers. So the bottom line is that there is no standardized way, because the data collection and transformation is not standardized. But because of that, you can actually come up with the way that you like the most and propose it to Themis, and then everybody will do it the way you're doing it.
Well, the core kind of issue is, I think, PHQ2 in itself, and again, this might have been discussed already, can be a very good indication of no presence of MDD. So when developing the phenotype, putting in PHQ2 might not be the best. It's really the PHQ2 with the presence of a PHQ9 that would be the indicator, whereas PHQ2 alone oftentimes could indicate very much not, because they did not continue with that.
So from these 20 papers, one paper used the scores as a part of the algorithm, and 2 other papers used the scores from PHQ9 as validation. So they built diagnosis-based phenotypes, and then they used PHQ9 as validation. This paper, because they didn't really look at MDD, but instead at depression, they were just like doing something not necessarily clear.
Okay, great. That's all I had. I just wanted to have a better understanding of how PHQ2 is used. I'll continue to kind of look through the papers and whatnot and add to that.
But to answer your question, you can definitely build a logic that combines both and put thresholds on both, or the presence of either.
Okay.
In the CDM, it's just you have to check how is the PHQ score data is actually ETL'd in your own CDM. But
yeah, it seems like it's not standardized.
Yeah, it's not standardized. That's the point. Like you will go, but it's there. But it's, as Anna said, it depends on the ETL. So you'll need to figure how that happened, and then based on that, put a logic that required the 2 or required a particular score, and so forth.
But I think, to Anna's point, when she said, "Oh, you should pick the one you like," I think it's the purpose of Phenotype Phebruary to use the expertise of the group of MDD experts to arrive not at the one person likes, but at the one the group likes. So at the end of the whole, maybe in our paper out of this group, we should mention that we noticed this PHQ thing. We try to replicate it. I'm not sure if we even have one resource where we actually, I would have a simple cohort, find people with a score more than 4. And I would want to see a network study of saying which databases actually capture that and have that. So I think that I like the sentence, find the one you like, but I would rephrase it, find one which the group at the end as a consensus liked a lot and is recommending for the network.
Okay, thank you, Wojtek. Thank you for your thoughts. And thank you everybody for today's work group meeting. I hope this was useful and educational. And if you have any feedback on how Phenotype February is progressing, please reach out to me, Aza, Anna, Jamie, or RCA, who are working on this. And there will be, please monitor the Odyssey forums because we'll continue to post that as a medium of communication. There's also the MS Team channels where you'll get notifications. Anything else before I close out? Asa, Anna, Jamie?
Wojtek, because you're QCing few, just can you indicate for us that maybe color code the column of QC when you are fine with the cohort and you think it's good enough? Just check it out, check for us so we know it's, because Anna and I now gonna finish the QCing, and if you're QCing something and you're fine with it and you think it's good, just let us know in the sheet so we kind of move it along.
Yeah, I was using the QC column and prefixing VH for what I wrote, so hopefully it's clear. Because I saw some entries there which I didn't wrote. I was like, okay, that's fine. These are notes of someone else.
Oh yeah, so I put some QC, some
That's
notes for
okay.
you when you QC.
Oh,
like I
okay.
made some decision. I wanted you to know that those are deliberate, or like I made that. So when you QC, you know what I meant to do at least.